Welcome back, everyone. If I could bring the room to order. Councillors? I don't want to have to name any councillors in particular. Please, could we bring the room to order? Community board chairs, not naming anybody in particular. So we come to item 10.2 on our agenda, the Speed Management Plan Update, Paekākāriki Village Consultation. I'll pass over to Sean and Ron.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I wouldn't mind just adding a little bit of context to the recommendation we've made and why I made it. So the issue we had is with the consultation, we had a 55-45 split. And my thinking was that if you had adopted, say, the other recommendation with an area wide, you could get a large part of the community who were completely against it. And so the idea was this gave us an opportunity to actually trial some traffic calming on, sort of the higher speed roads in Paekākāriki. The community could try the different types of traffic calming out. We could record the speeds, and then we can get together with all the new information and then hopefully bring the sides together. And also the idea is that when you have community buy-in, there's likely to be more adherence to, the speed limit. The risk we have is, and I'm not saying it will happen, but the risk is if we go ahead and put in a 30k and we don't get the adherence, the last thing we want to do is put in a whole lot of traffic calming to force people to go to 30, because that's completely contrary to what this whole new speed management plan is about, where we go area wide and we actually do less. So that's the rationale for the recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions from elected members? Councillor Kirby.
A quick question. If we went with the option 2, with this, which is the 30 kilometres around the school, 100 metres, we could stage it to the whole area later in this process of speed management plan. Is that fair?
Yes, well, that was the idea. We could still trial the traffic calming on Wellington Road near the play centre and also down the parade, and then we could feed that back. And then don't forget, we've also got, there's a clear feedback from the entire community in Kapiti to do expand buffers around school zones. And of course, we were planning to start that consultation in 2025 anyway, and that would have just fed into that. So, yes.
So it would become a delay of 18 months or thereabouts in the process if we went just with option 2. Option 2.
Yes, except we probably could do the trial earlier. We wouldn't wait 18 months to do the trial.
So what time frame are we talking about with the trial on those traffic calming? Would that become part of the Paekākāriki seawall development?
No, what we're planning to do is in early next year. So the current focus is to get all of the variable speed limits implemented, and we're well underway with that and getting delivery finished by the end of June next year. And then in the first half of next year, what we wanted to do is talk to the remaining communities with the permanent traffic calming, because there are options in terms of the type of the traffic calming, where it's located, and also whether we stage that. And that, my thinking was, we would have included Paekākāriki for the trials on the parade and Wellington Road as part of that conversation.
Okay.
So that would be in advance of December 2024, potentially?
Yes.
Yes. But the other issue then, though, in terms of a change to if you go through that process and you're stepping through a staged approach, we wouldn't then be coming back to look at a Paekākāriki wide 30 as an option until the next iteration. Would that be 2027, or could you do that sooner?
Well, the idea was we would probably start the conversations were going to start in 2025. So remember, this time what we've done is shall we say, staff have put out a whole lot of proposals for the community to comment on. The difference between this plan and the next plan was we would do essentially pre-consultation on schools. So we'd have a lot of community input, and then we would develop those plans, and then those plans would then go out for the wider consultation for the next plan for the community. So that's the difference between the two approaches.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
To you, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I just had a couple of questions. Reading through the submissions, I noted there was some reference to the play centre, which just sits outside that 100-metre zone, I think. Is there any chance of sort of getting some calming done or something sort of extending or looking after that particular spot at all, or is that really all?
That's included in our revised proposal to do
Lovely,
some
thank
trial
you.
traffic calming.
And also, the only other comment I had was just on the times that we have for the variables. It seemed to me that the times, and I should have perhaps brought this up a whole lot earlier in the process, but it seems to me that the times are actually quite tight. You know, to me, it looked like a half an hour on either side rather than the time frame I think that's there would perhaps, or even an hour on either side would be helpful. Is there any comment on that at all?
Well, currently we have standardised times where we have the Jack and Jill signs going.
Yep.
I don't know exactly what they are. It's 25, 30 minutes, I think, before school, and maybe 20 minutes after school, so they're standardised across the district. And the same approach would be for the VSL signs as well.
Cool.
Because beyond that, there's very little activity.
Yeah, I'll just make sure we capture the activity. Yep. That's all we can do. That's it. Thank you very much.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the chair. I left my light on, but my question was very much about the play centre and whether or not that could be included, and thank you for your answer on that if we went with option 2. Thank you.
Great. Councillor Coe.
Oh, just a quick one. So just to be really clear, the reason why you haven't gone for option 1 is because you're concerned about the public backlash. Is that the only reason?
I'm not worried about the public backlash. I'm more interested in getting, shall we say, two sides, to get the buy-in. And so this approach was actually to buy a bit of time to trial some traffic calming, because it's been quite clear for the parade and outside the play centre, and then the community could try that. They could try that out. We would also have the data showing how effective or not it was, and then hopefully when we share that information, then hopefully the two sides would then come together. So then if we could get then an agreement on the plan, whether it's all of 30 or whatever, then we get the community buy-in, and that was the background.
So it's a staged approach you're recommending.
Yep.
So option
Same outcome, different approach.
So option 2 doesn't exclude option 1 down the track, assuming you get.
Just need to look at
So down the track, you could still have 30k across the board.
Definitely.
If there was community agreement to do that.
Yes, I think, but I don't know in terms of whether you'd need to wait till 2027 till we look to the new, because every 3 years we have to amend the speed management plan.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether you could do it outside of that time frame, or whether you'd stage do the physical works, do the calming, leave the localised 30s around the school, but you might have to wait till 2027, would you, before you change the rest of the...
You're right. We can basically, the plan is reviewed every 3 years, but we do have the ability to do an out-of-cycle change to the speed management plan, which is not an onerous process with Paekākāriki.
Right, but your concern is if we go too hard, too fast, people won't buy into it. Is that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, just a sort of question of clarification off the back of Councillor Pravanov's question in relation to the play centre and potential traffic calming measures there. So just to confirm, if we went with option 1, so the blanket 30, we made that decision today, that would not exclude what was in the report and in the recommendations around those bits added into the speed management plan to calm and slow traffic outside the play centre and around the school. That is all included anyway, or could be if we so chose to do it that way.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Cooper.
It's just a question and observation all wrapped in one, but it is a question. So if...
Stick to questions, please.
No, it's definitely a question. So in option 2, it's essentially 100 metres either side of the school. So what... There's not much of a trial, is it? A trial would be splitting Paekākāriki in half and doing a qualitative assessment of this half of Paekākāriki versus that half of Paekākāriki. If we're just going to run it as a trial, 100 metres either side of the school, it's quite limited because it captures virtually none of Paekākāriki. So what value would that trial have is my
Well,
question.
The proposal would be is the variable speed limits would go in and around the school. Then we would do the traffic calming down the parade and down Wellington. We would trial it out. But the other key thing is we would actually do quite a bit of monitoring to make sure that we the speeds are going down, but we also don't have traffic diversion, and where we didn't have an issue before, we create a new issue.
So the trial is probably more about the traffic calming.
Correct.
Looking at that as a mechanism to maybe change behaviour and how successful that might be before you put a speed limit in place to do that. That's really the trial element to it, is really just the traffic calming works.
If I may, I'll just add another. You would have all received a copy of this here. So down the bottom there is essentially if we reduce the speed from 50 kilometres an hour to 30 kilometres an hour, and we have no traffic calming, essentially what it will be is those free speeds. So these are the speeds that people travel. This is all from TomTom data, where you're travelling. You're not held up by anyone else. It's just your own speed. That free speed, roughly 40 kilometres an hour, that'll only come down about 2 kilometres an hour. That's all. It's based on research and a model. So that's why the parade, you can see where it's 38 and 42, and also Wellington Road 48 and 42, 43. That's why those roads need the traffic calming. All the other roads are essentially around 30 anyway, so even bringing that down to 30, that would virtually make no difference to the travel speeds on those roads.
Councillor Cooper, did you have another question? Could we have Councillor Cooper's microphone back, please? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Just in respect to the traffic calming, if we're talking speed humps, which I know there's a series of chicanes and road narrowing and such like, if we're talking speed humps, are you aware of any research that it causes behaviour where people speed up to speed humps and then accelerate away from speed humps in terms of behavioural change? Poor behavioural change?
Yes, there's definitely research, and that's exactly what does happen. People do speed up, they slow down, and then also there's the noise going across the humps as well. It's a well-known fact, and so when we'll be consulting with, shall we say, especially residents for these proposals, not just here but elsewhere, we're going to have to make them aware that those are the negative effects, and it's a bit of a trade-off. So we might have to look at where we actually get those locations.
Thank you. Cheers. Appreciate it.
Councillor Warwick.
Is there any opportunity, as there's only 2 points to go into Paekākāriki, to go on the option 2 slow burn, but put up signs that recommend 30 kilometres and see how the gauge how the community feels if traffic actually is compliant and slows down? Are they feeling safer?
Like you have going around corners, for instance.
But just big signs at the end. You've only got 2 entrance points. You know, our community expects low speed zone. Please protect our children. Things like that.
Well, we currently do have signage. Beach Road, 30k, and then when you're coming in Ames Street, there's 50. But what we can do is we do also have, the driver feedback signs, and that actually collects data, and that actually displays to the community or approaching drivers what the speeds is. And you'll all know about Timoana Road, and there's a lot of other roads around Realm Drive where I live. There's lots of those around the coast. So that's something that we could utilise, and part of that is to help engage, I suppose, with the community as well.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you. A point of clarification. So am I correct in my assumption that this speed review, this first tranche of the speed review, was basically just around schools, and so that's so option 2 is basically sitting. So is option 2 the status quo for what is required? I think it's a government directive, and that what potentially we could be considering is doing what we were going to do anyway further down the line.
The schools is a government directive.
Yes.
If council decides to go area-wide, we are we're supposed to aim for at least 40% of schools by the end of June. So even if Paekākāriki come out, we're still going to achieve that target.
So it's a case of where protecting the school or reducing the speed around the school is something that has to be done anyway.
They all have to be done by 2027, staged
Right,
approach.
okay, thank you.
Councillor Coфord.
Well, thank you. Well, thanks for your report and your briefings during the year. I think we're all really up to speed. Just going back to my previous comment this morning, the traffic that we're trying to get down to 30k is actually the appropriate speed for that environment. As Jan alluded to this morning, we've got bands, we've got parking, we've got kids. The only issue which is a speed track, is Marine Parade. My point is going for option one really is saying, hey, look, keep to the appropriate speed for the area, for the conditions, and we'll put more control in Marine Parade. I think, as elected members, I think the community has left it up to us to make a decision. To go back to a trial, I think
Is there a question in here, Councillor Coфord?
I'm just getting to it. And
It's quite a debatey preamble.
yes. So, am I right, or do you think it's appropriate that we are really just trying to make the public keep to the conditions that they should be keeping to now, which is 30, and go for the whole, go for option one? And I think, as Jan said, we've got to be brave and make a decision today, and either you're into safety or you're not.
Again,
And
Councillor Coford,
okay,
is there a
I'll
question?
finish there. Thank you. I'll terminate.
I don't think a response is required. Councillor Halliday?
Yeah, look, mine's actually a point of clarity. I think this, I might just, I think there's a little bit of confusion around this. So, if my reading on this is right, option two is going to be permanent, 100 metres around the schools at 30 kilometres an hour with calming, with also a trial around traffic calming on other parts of Wellington Road and the parade.
Yes.
And option one is full 30 kilometres an hour across Paekākāriki, still with the calming measures around the 100 metres in the school.
No, because what happens is around the school, I'll slow down. The calming measures will still be around the school, but the 100 metre zone, that will disappear because that will be encompassed within the area wide.
I appreciate that, but the measures we're putting in place around the school would still be there.
Yes.
Regardless of the option.
Correct.
Those measures going around the school would still be there.
Correct.
Lovely, thank you very much. Quite happy to move that, Madam Chair, if required.
Okay, it's foreshadowed. No, that's not quite. Right, so I don't think I have any other questions, so I'll just clarify what you're moving there.
I'll be moving the
Councillor Halliday?
recommendations as written. So B would be council approves the inclusion of option two.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Pravanov. Right of introduction?
Could I ask whether there was leeway for another councillor to potentially?
Yeah, I'd say if anybody's wanting option one, I'd take that as an amendment.
I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion or to the recommendations on the table, which I don't know if they can be put up on screen, but essentially it's just to change option two to option one in both B and C, and also to change recommendation C to read council approves the installation of option one when work programs allow, and then also to amend E7 to say, note that further engagement with the community may be necessary throughout the implementation of option one. So remove the E7 that's in our report and replace it with the E7 that I've just repeated.
Okay, I'm looking for a seconder for that for that amendment. Councillor Wilson. Right of introduction on the amendment.
Sure. So thank you for the opportunity to put this amendment on the table, and also thank you to the public speakers who have been with us this morning, also for the duration of the meeting so far. I think the case has been made pretty clear as to why taking this bold step now when we have been through a second stage of consultation specifically to test the community's views on this, and the community has come back and said, and when we look at who the people in our community are that have come back in support of this village-wide 30 kilometres per hour speed limit alongside traffic calming measures being trialled, they are the people who are most exposed to the damage of higher speeds within the village. So I think when we look at who we're hearing from and when we look at what they want us to do, I think this is one way of us honouring our obligation to their safety and their well-being, especially as we seek to encourage more people to walk and cycle in our district, with transport emissions being the highest component of our district's emissions. So I would hope that there would be the support for this bold step that we have the opportunity to take today in honouring what our tamariki want and need for their future and their safety in Paekākāriki, and also acknowledging the community board's leadership on this matter, and that of those who have been involved with this conversation.
I'll open that up for debate on the amendment. So this is, we're debating the amendment from option 2 to option 1. Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, just to speak in favour of this option 1. There's a couple of ways of looking at this, I guess. One is to zoom out and say, how does this fit the brand that we as a council are keen to promote? Tourism, cycling, cafes, an art society type stuff. And so option 1 meets those demands. Paekākāriki is at the end of the rainbow as far as our cycle trails are concerned. All cycle trails lead to Paekākāriki eventually. So again, but the most compelling thing for me really is that I'm a firm believer in localism, as has been described, and when a community board makes a recommendation, the Paekākāriki Community Board is effectively the council for Paekākāriki, and they've made a decision, and because they are the people on the ground there, they have spoken to their community has spoken to them, no doubt they've had the to's and fro's and the debates and all the rest of it, and they've been prepared to take this step to advocate for this on behalf of their community. And I don't have a view that can counter the view that the Paekākāriki Community Board have come to, having spoken to their own community. I found the evidence of Lynn and Richard and Jan, Paul and Julia, I found that absolutely compelling. And also there's the compelling evidence of the difference between, and you know, our own people are acknowledging this, the difference between getting hit at 50 as opposed to 40 as opposed to 30 is really significant. When we went out and consulted with the community, that was one of the graphs that we used to tell people this is what happens. You know, you hit someone at 50 and they're dead, and you hit them at 30 and they're not very well. So there's a big difference there. I'm not sure that the naysayers will care particularly about the data. If they did, then they would be in favour of going to 30 now. So waiting, sort of trialling something, you know, some sort of transition, I don't think that's going to make any difference to the people who don't think it's a good idea. Some people think 50 is way too low. You know, you're never going to convince them, right? So I think it is incumbent on this council to be in keeping with the stuff that we're already in favour of. So sustainability, it meets those measures. It just meets a whole bunch of measures that we've already spoken very much in favour of. And besides which fact, gee, just slow down and enjoy the view. That along the parade in Paekākāriki, people pay a fortune to travel across from the other side of the world to come and have a look at that. You get to see more of it at 30 than you do at 50. So, and if Paekākāriki is willing to be a guinea pig. Oh, and the other thing too, Paekākāriki has parades. They love their parades, don't they? They had one last week, the Pride Parade. John Trimmer used to dance in the streets down there in Paekākāriki. It's fabulous. So let's see more of that.
Mr. Judge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm pleased to be here today on behalf of Paekākāriki Community Board and send apologies from our chair. I just want to reiterate and be super clear. So the community was well aware in the second round of consultation what the options were. Option 1 was to move to 30 without delay. Option 2 was to move to 30 with delay. All right, we were very clear. The community board worked very hard to send an explanation of that to every household in the village. So when this referendum sort of thing came back in, it was to act now or act in the future. I just want to be super clear about that. I'm also very clear, and thank the officials for this, for saying the traffic calming measures will go ahead sooner rather than later anyway. So it's just a matter of the 30 village-wide. You've heard from the community today, from our most welcome speakers, with the unanimity around moving to 30 for the whole village without delay. You've also heard from the community over 2 rounds of consultation, both of which that came out in favour of 30 kilometres per hour across the village without undue delay. And I trust all the councillors received the letter from our board chair setting out the reasons for supporting the community to move 30 kilometres across the whole village. I have a small number, and it is a small number of points, so I'm not going to delay you too long. First, the safety improvements are clear. These are a matter of physics and an experience of what happens to the human body struck at different speeds. This is not a matter of conjecture. Also pleased to see that the proposed traffic calming is not overly dependent on speed humps, because I think there's only 2 raised platforms in the proposal at the moment. They are both adjacent to the school, and so therefore there's no reason why anyone, unless they live in, I think, about 3 houses, should not be able to avoid them if they're particularly concerned about their low-slung vehicle or whatever it is. There would be ways around them to drive around them by alternative routes at 30 kilometres an hour to maintain the peace. We're talking about Paekākāriki today, but we do feel that moving to 30 across the village will provide a local example of how this works out, particularly related to schools when you hopefully come to consider that issue again across the district at a later date. We would welcome you all learning from our experience. This point is made in para 30.2 of the paper before you. The purpose of expanding the school zones is to provide a safe environment that encourages students to walk and cycle to school. The operative word in this statement is to school. It does not say once at school. Let's see how this goes. Very, very nearly finished now, Madam Chair. Moving now to 30 in the 30 village-wide now, again as officials note, will help the council meet its own climate objectives. And again, para 36 from the paper in front of you. Option 1 has the potential to provide a greater contribution to climate change by setting safe speed limits that may encourage a shift to a more friendly and active modes of walking and cycling. Finally, this is the final point, Madam Chair, a point on local democracy and confidence in council consultation processes and demonstrating that we are listening to the communities we serve. Council has twice asked, and the Paekākāriki community has come back asking twice for a village-wide 30 kilometre per hour limit without further delay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you were well within the time limit for debate there, Christian. Councillor Halliday.
2 things, Madam Chair. First of all, it's just a point of clarity before I do my debate aspect. But with regards to community boards speaking after a motion's been seconded, outside question time, do they have the? Is that covered in our standing orders?
Community boards, chairs or their representatives have full speaking rights at the council table.
That's after the motion. I just wanted clarity on that. That was all. That's why I didn't interrupt at all.
And it often happens. Yeah.
No, that's cool. Just checking. That was. I wasn't too sure. Right. So I'm supporting option 2. This isn't going to please everybody, as is shown by the survey, but I don't find the survey decisive. I do want to acknowledge all the work that's been done by the community board, but I want to note this is not a trial. Okay, this is being put in place. And why I support this is it's a staged approach. We've done that for the rest of the district, and we've allowed the community boards to take this back to the community for further discussion, and I support the ability to be able to do that. I appreciate that there are some key roads that are of big concern in Paekākāriki, but these are also being covered by trial. And we're going to try different things to calm that traffic down. And to me, we need time to do that. Putting the 30 kilometre an hour across the district in place straight away does raise concerns to me. I'd like to see, we've been told time and time again that there's no pedestrian crossings down there. And I think this is fantastic this is happening because it's long overdue. But my concern is that, okay, we've got to get kids used, and people used to using those pedestrian crossings, because currently everyone's used to just crossing the road wherever they feel like it, and trying to beat the traffic. I would hate for kids to think that they can still do that just because the speed's been lowered to 30 kilometres an hour. We do want people crossing at the right points, and we do want our kids understanding that that's how the safety works when crossing roads around the place. I've commented in the past on the quality of the work that's been done in this space by Ron and his team, and I'm quite happy to stand by that comment with regards to supporting option 2, which is what's been recommended by councillors. Taking on board what Councillor Wilson has said, I am usually a very strong supporter with regards to community boards and the views of the community boards, and I do respect those views. But this is not a case of something not going to happen. It's just happening in a staged approach rather than it happening all at once. And I think the prudent approach to this is to do it in that staged approach. I want to see the focus initially around the schools. I want to see that work done around the schools. I want to see that school safe with pedestrian crossings, traffic calming as the highest priority, not scrambling to try and necessarily sort the whole of the area out all at once. And I think that would potentially be detrimental, you know what I mean, with regards to that being put in place. I don't think the schools would drop down the list of priority, but that's where I want to see the priority over the next couple of years. That's my bit, so I won't be supporting the amendment. I'll be looking at option 2 as it's stated in the paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Halliday, and thanks for that clarification at the end, because I'm not sure that was clear all the way through. Councillor Warwick?
Although I think 30 kilometres around Paekākāriki would be good, I kind of agree with Martin, because we don't, at 55-45, you've still got a big part of the community who doesn't want it, and a staged approach is not going to anger those people. The other thing is, so you've got to, I think we've got to present it as a plan going forward, like staff have said, and also make sure the rest of the district don't think that it's going to happen in there. A blanket 30k in their communities, because they're quite different to Paekākāriki. So I think, yes, we aim for that, but I don't think we're going to make people very happy just going, well, we're going to just do it anyway. We can do it with the community rather than just to the community.
Councillor Cooper?
I am always a supporter of listening to the ward councillors who are connected to their community, and I think we've empowered the community boards, particularly in this triennium, to be more connected with their community and with our council. Paekākāriki is not my community, and if I was to go into that community, then I shouldn't speed. I should drive responsibly. So I'll generally always support, not always, lay weight to the ward councillors. I did that in Otaki with the dam, and I'll do it, the reservoir, yep, and I'll generally lay a lot of weight to those people who are connected to their community, and they were elected to represent them. As most of you know, I actually voted against the last round of speed humps, speed management plan. So in some ways I possibly should abstain from this, considering that I didn't vote for the original speed management plan, but because we've heard impassioned pleas from the community and from the council and from the ward councillor, I'll most likely vote and not abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kirby.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you to the staff for this, the report. One of the things I stood for council, my phrase was, I will listen, learn and lead, and I think I've pretty clearly heard today from the community, those who are willing to show up at least, in terms of their support of option 1. Seeing the survey and seeing 55-45, it's a little more contentious potentially there, but there is still a majority. So in terms of that, I will be supporting this amendment. The other reason for me is we are looking to the future, and our children have pretty clearly, when I looked at their responses, it was 100% in support of option 1 from the school. And I know how challenging it is for teachers to take young people out of their school environments into the community to engage with the environment, and I also know the conditions around Paekākāriki in terms of the undulations of the roads and the narrowness at times, the challenges that exist there. And I think in terms of our tamariki and the future, I think I will support this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the chair. So we've spent a lot of time on speed management, not only in this area, but in the rest of the district. And to me, I think that we need to be consistent across the district in how we roll out this process. Saying that, obviously, there has been another look at the situation in Paekākāriki, and which has been great. And so what we've heard today from our speakers are a number of things, and I suppose in relation to the speakers, they have an interest in cycling, whatever the issues are that are being raised, and we've also heard that the Paekākāriki Community Board are supporting a speed reduction in the whole district, but I can't get away from the fact that basically 45% of the community wasn't represented today, is not being represented by the community board. And as I said, the numbers are important, but also too, you need to look at the reasons. And when you actually look at the reasons for why people have voted whatever way, and listening to the principal of the primary school there, that a large number of children currently walk and bike to school, and as a parent, to me the test is it safe? So obviously it is considered to be safe anyway. I think that initially extending, or basically having the 30k area around the school and extending it to the play centre is actually the way that we should start on this, and given time, potentially we can roll it out to the rest of the village if it is then deemed appropriate. So I will be not supporting option 1, but option 2. Thank you.
Right, anybody else? I'll just say a little something before I put it to the vote. There's no right of reply on an amendment. So I agree with Councillor Pravanov. It's not a referendum necessarily. It's not a numbers game, but I did look through the submissions and I found the arguments for reducing the speed limit on balance to be quite convincing. And I've found our speakers today to be very convincing. We could take a staged approach. We've heard that that might take a long time. There's also some uncertainty around this legislation, which makes me feel uncomfortable. And you're always going to get more people, well, a number of people wanting the status quo. no matter what you're trying to do. So once you factor that in, the fact that more than half of the people want what is actually quite a significant change, to me is quite convincing in terms of a piece of consultation. My congratulations to the community board for doing this, for putting this out. It's been a huge amount of work, and they've copped a lot of flack from the community as well. A lot of you can't see it because it's a closed Facebook account, but if you could, it would be quite informative as to what it's like at the coalface in Paekākāriki sometimes. So I think there's been quite a lot of work done on this. I have heard staff that it's not going to be easy, but I trust staff also that if they gave this as an option that we could consult on, that it's possible. And I think Paekākāriki is the kind of place where bold moves can happen. And it's not going to happen elsewhere across the district immediately, but maybe in time it might, and to me that would be a good thing. So I'll be supporting the amendment today. And with that, I will put it to the vote. All in favour, please say, this is the amendment, by the way, changing it to option 1, and with those other minor changes, including timing and potential consultation. We don't know what that would look like yet. So I'll put that amendment to the vote. This is for option 1. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? I think we'll need a division actually, because that's not clear.
Those in favour?
So I think I should read out, somebody should read out the names for the verbal record.
So I've got Worship the Mayor. Worship the Mayor, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Coford, Councillor Hanford, Councillor Kirby, Councillor Wilson.
And against? Please raise your hand.
Halliday, Spires, Pravanov, Warwick, and we have one abstention.
Councillor Coe.
Coe.
So that amendment is carried. We now go back to the substantive motion, including those amendments. I don't believe you've exercised your right of introduction yet, Councillor Halliday. Do you still want to proceed with that?
Waived, Madam Chair. I've said everything I needed to say in the previous
I
one.
think we debated it during the debate on the amendment, really. So I'll now put that to the vote. That's what we've got up on our screen, which is the substantive motion with those amendments included. All in favour? So the substantive motion is now option 1 because we've passed the amendment to the original motion. So that's what you see on your screen in front of you. Is everybody clear about that? So we're now voting on that. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move on to, thanks for your contribution and your attendance today in the public gallery. We now have item 10.2, amendments to council delegations to staff. We'll just take a few minutes to reset. Could councillors please take their seats? We're moving on with the agenda. Haven't quite got to lunchtime yet. Thank you, everybody. Who just binged a bell? I need a bell. So now we have amendments to council delegations, to staff, page 108, and we have Sarah and Hara. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou. So look, I'll largely take this report as read, but because it's a bit technical, I'll just briefly outline what the changes are to council's delegations to staff that are highlighted in this report and asking you to make a decision on. So number one is stock standard. There are some positional changes, so reflecting either new positions or changes to position titles under the RMA. There are also some changes to reflect the Natural and Built Environments Act receiving royal assent in August, and so the Act itself is about this thick, and there are transitional provisions. Not all of the provisions take effect immediately. In fact, not many do. But what we have proposed is for those provisions that do take effect, that they are delegated to the CE and the Group Manager Strategy and Growth, and they are relating to the fast-track consenting process under the NBEA. So it relates to our ability as local authority to provide written comments to the Environmental Protection Authority. And then there's also a further change relating to certain affected resource consents, which relate to freshwater discharge, and it's about the duration of those resource consents. So quite technical, and that delegation actually is under the RMA. So you will see it in the appendices and the RMA changes. Staff are working on, will work through other transitional changes needed under the NBEA, and that'll be a piece of work. Ministry for the Environment have provided some really helpful guidance, and so we'll need to step through the changes as they come into effect, and there are some different points that happens. So that's the NBEA changes. There are some other minor changes. One is just around execution of certain property transactions. That's already in there, but it was just to make it really clear. Also to reflect the repeal of the COVID-19 Fast Track Consenting Act. Again, there are some transitional provisions that will stay in effect to reflect things that we will still need to do for live applications, essentially. And lastly, there is some wording in there to reflect an error that we've picked up around the delegation of the power under Clause 25, Schedule 1 of the RMA, which is the power for council to, it's the delegation of the ability to consider a private request for a plan change. You as a council haven't considered this. It was considered by the previous council in August last year, and a decision was made that it be delegated to the chief executive with a condition that you as the elected members be notified. Unfortunately, at an operational level, there was just an error. So that section is duplicated, and one section says that staff have the delegation, or Darren has the delegation, the other says that you have the delegation, so it's confusing. We haven't proposed to change it as yet. We wanted to flag it for transparency. We want to bring you back advice on that to enable a proper decision, given it's recently been discussed. So that is just highlighting that that's there, and the reason why we haven't proposed a change. We think you need the full advice to make an informed decision. So that's it. Able to take any questions, or we can work through the recommendations before you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about that? Did everybody understand it? Good. Councillor Halliday.
Right, got it. I haven't got a list, don't worry. Look, again, this is bread and butter stuff for you guys, so yep. I'm happy to take the lead on this, have looked over it, nothing jumps out at me. One question I did have, though, in our delegations, we've, from the compliance officers, we're using eyes on security. My question was just, it's more of a curiosity thing for staff, is the people that we use from a contractor perspective in the space that are representing council out in the market, for want of a better phrase, interfacing with our customers, do they go through an induction process with regards to, you know, council's expectations of levels of service and and that sort of thing? Does that happen?
I can provide a general answer, which is that there are induction processes for our contractors, and that would be slightly different depending on the team that leads the induction, so whether it's regulatory, whether it's infrastructure. But yes, there's contracts in place, and then there are induction, so that the staff that are performing different functions know what they need to know, and can fulfil those responsibilities to the relevant.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's more like Jim, who's currently out in the foyer, is a fantastic example of a contractor who is just magic for people that are coming into the building, that sort of stuff. Hopefully he's not the exception to the rule. We're just seeing if we had any processes in place.
Certainly
to
not
the other
the exception to the rule.
But I wanted to acknowledge him as well because I think he's fantastic.
He is particularly outstanding.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Well said. Councillor Coфord.
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks for that. Could you just clarify the fast track consenting process? We have one or two applications that were made in an emergency during COVID, and they haven't actually been submitted yet, but they have gone through. Seems ridiculous to fast track them during COVID and then sit on them. Can't they go through the normal, notified planning process?
Without knowing the specifics and looking at it, would be difficult. Chris might have a more of a helpful response.
Otaki race calls.
Thank you. I think outside of this briefing, we have been providing an update of the information that we've received from central government. So central government are driving that process rather than at a local level, at district level. And so you have an LG Hub, the most up-to-date information we have on the fast track consent process, and as new information comes to hand, we will be updating you on that, but note your comments.
Yeah, just concerned that central government are again dictating how we operate in our village areas, our urban planning, and how inappropriate that is. I'd like to register that. And also, central government will be, turning a lot around very shortly, repealing a lot of things. So, has that been taken into account? So we hope when things aren't being pushed through in the next month, it should not really be pushed through. I'll just register that. Thank you.
The Chief Executive is going to provide a response to that.
Thank you. Thanks, Your Worship. Just touching on the comments that Chris made. This is not our process. This is a central government process. And so we don't have an opportunity to push anything through. We are, for want of a better word, bystanders like anyone else. And so when we are asked to provide advice, we do so in a technical way, but we do not have an opportunity to push anything through that is fast-tracked, because that is outside of our processes. We work under the RMA. We don't work through the specific fast-track legislation. We are asked to provide advice, and when we are, we do so.
No, thanks for that. I'm just concerned that we have one or two projects that central government could push through, and they should be repealed, and probably will be. I'm not putting a slur on the Kapiti District Council, but where do we stand with regard to a situation like that could be repealed by central government?
I think that's a political question rather than a staff question.
Well, it affects us. It affects our environment, and I think that we should have advocacy to government immediately to see where we stand, and
so
perhaps
we're getting a little off track here. So what I suggest we do, if this is an issue that you want us to advocate on, I think that's a political advocacy activity. So I'd want us to get together as councillors and come to a mutual position. I'm happy to write a letter or something like that, or discuss as a council how we might want to communicate our position on those issues. I don't think it's a matter of this particular paper or for staff. But thanks for raising those points.
And
'cause
thank you for-
really, you're reflecting a deep concern in the community.
And thank you for clarifying the fast track consenting. Thanks.
Councillor Cooper.
Just a point of clarification. Where we have those two delegations where it's a little bit murky, whether it falls on the elected members or the CE, is that not an issue at the moment because we don't have any private plan changes coming through that require that delegation? And if we have got one, we would rush something through before it was required? Would that be the thinking?
So there aren't any. Yeah, I'll hand to Chris.
As it currently stands, we recently had a conversation and had said to you that, the CE had said that we believed that you had the delegation at the moment, and in the last conversation we had, that is what we stood by. What we're coming back to you on is effectively a decision we'll talk to you about whether that should stay with what we've tabled in terms of it being your decision, or whether you do want to change that delegation to chief executive level, and just to really understand the pros and cons of both points. So there is no issue if something comes forward, but we want to clarify that. So we'd be saying at the moment that it's your decision as it currently stands.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Chris. Cheers.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you. Through the chair, rather than actually going through all the various clauses in the RMA,
yeah, please don't.
Yeah, I know. So this is, these are my two questions. Well, our first two questions. Do any of these changes in delegations take away any decision making and opportunity to be consulted to councillors and community boards?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's great to hear. My second question is, as a result of these new delegations, does that mean that some of our staff will become warranted officers?
I don't believe so. But with the NBEA changes, because the Act is essentially this thick, what we've done is we have delegated any powers that are able to be delegated. There are certain ones that are not able to be delegated to the CE to enable us to make appropriate operational decisions if we need to. So if there was something popped up and an officer needed a warrant under the NBEA, I don't think that is required because most of the regulatory powers continue under the RMA. The recommendation from the Ministry for Environment is that in most instances that's the most appropriate approach to take at the moment until the compliance and enforcement provisions in the NBEA take effect. Seems really unlikely to me, but I wouldn't want to give you an absolute. So we would look at it, and if it was something that we needed to elevate to you, we would.
Okay, thank you very much.
Excellent questions, thank you.
Sorry, point of clarity.
Yeah?
Just on that comment, those security officers that we're giving delegations to, do they become warranted officers, or are they just acting on behalf? How does that fit in?
In some instances, they are able to be warranted. It depends on the Act in question. The provisions play out differently in terms of what's allowed and what isn't allowed. James, did you want to add to that?
No, you're absolutely right. Through the chair, it depends the function they're undertaking. If it's closing park gates and those sorts of things, then they wouldn't be warranted. But if they're dealing with noise control complaints, which would fall under the RMA, they would absolutely need to be warranted, and they are going through that.
So this is allowing that warrant to happen. Thank you.
Great. So I'm looking for a mover for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Kirby, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Right of introduction, waived. Any debate? Okay, I'll put those recommendations. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much. Great work. And we'll look forward to that further advice coming. So we move to confirmation of minutes. So I have been advised of a correction to the minutes by the Deputy Mayor, and that was the notice of motion. We had a word that we wanted added in there, which isn't reflected in the minutes. No new fossil fuel infrastructure rather than production. We had, sorry, production, infrastructure production. So we're on page 126, and we didn't change it up on the screen, but we had agreed in the meeting. Councillor Kirby, would you like to just clarify that I've got it right? Which I don't. We
So
can
it's,
refer back to the audio record if we need to, but I don't.
Yeah, so it's 5A. Yeah, there it is. It's just adding the word infrastructure in there. That was agreed, that change, after some points made that no fossil fuel production could mean a whole range of things. So,
Yeah, people were worried about people closing down their local Z service station, for instance, and not being able to get their flat white alongside their fossil fuel. Sorry, I don't mean to be flippant. It is quite serious, yeah, fossil fuel production. Okay, so have staff got that change? So Councillor Vince Wilson, I don't think your draft fossil fuel treaty specific to this council is relevant to the item that we're on, which is confirmation of the minutes. Thank you very much. Councillor Halliday?
Clarification / question, page 129, is not a correction on the minutes as such. It was more what the process is with regards to following up recommendations. I note D1 on page 129 refers to the Paekākāriki Community Board asking or suggesting that around the Chief Executive investigating whether the processes around Antenio were working, and you're going to be following up on that. And I was just wondering what the process to report that back is.
Darren? Yeah, so we said we'd have a look at it, yeah. Didn't we, Darren?
Yep, thank you. Yep, good point. So yeah, that was the takeaway. So there's a matters under action, a takeaway for me to go and have a look at our system, understand, and if there's a link or a disconnect, and then bring that back to you.
Do we? I just also so we may find some more of these coming up. I just noticed. Do we have a report back process as such? Do we tag it into like a council meeting, or does it come back in general? I'm just curious. I'm happy to take it offline, but just looking to see what the process is.
Let's take
so
that
these don't get
offline as
lost.
part of our discussion on how we progress these notices of motion. Or
Oh, it's just recommendations from community boards or subcommittees as
recommendations
such.
is what I'm looking for. Yeah, community boards. Yep. We'll take that offline. I don't think we've ironed that out yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pavanov?
Yes, thank you. So it's my question is a similar question to Councillor Halliday. The wording in relation to the Waikanae Community Board is slightly different. So will that be looked at in terms of how that is reported back, that further investigation, how that is reported back as well? Or does that go directly to the Community Board?
At the moment, we're confirming the minutes, and we didn't discuss that, so it's not reflected in the minutes. If it's kind of a matter arising, let's take it offline. It's a similar question to Martin's, but we will discuss it.
Thank you.
And come back. Part of this ongoing sorting out how to deal with recommendations from community boards and subcommittees. But thank you. Yeah, similar points well raised. So do I have a mover and a seconder for those minutes? Moved Councillor Warwick, seconded Councillor Kirby. Any further discussion? All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. So can I have a mover that we go into public excluded, and then we'll discuss what to do next. Councillor Hanford has moved that we go into public excluded, seconded Councillor Halliday. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thanks those on live stream for your attendance.